So you signed up for this email profit summit because you want to learn more about email marketing and how to get better results. And so I'm going to share with you some lessons I've learned along the way. As your host, in addition to being the host of the email marketing summit, I've also generated millions of dollars in revenue on the internet and sent over 15 million emails relatively recently. So I'm going to get into some lessons that I've learned along the way that you can apply, built within mindsets and strategies and some tactics that you can do to get better results from your email marketing. So let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here real quick. So basically, along the way, I have learned a few things with email marketing. We're going to share that with you today. So, a little bit about me. As you know, I'm the host of the Email Profit Summit. This is actually my 26th virtual summit that I've hosted. Put on quite a few over the years, over the last 5 years. My company that I've been putting well, I should say, most of the 26 summits that I've been putting on have been in the e-commerce Amazon space, and most of those summits which some of you watching are familiar with those summits because you've signed up for my list from that. But what I would say is that I had sold off the company that I was putting on those events. It's called Maximizing E-commerce, and I sold that to a company called My Amazon Guy a couple years ago. And the reason he wanted to buy that company was because he liked both the events that were being put on as well as how I was structuring email marketing. So he spent a lot of money to tap into my knowledge, and so I'm going to share with you today in a way you don't have to spend all that money that he did to acquire my company. So we're going to go back in time a little bit, and I'm going to share a few different things. So that's my family there on the left. And that is from when I was in the corporate world. Well, I wasn't in the corporate world. I took that picture, but I used to work at a hotel in the corporate world, and I left the corporate world, and I went back there fairly recently. We stayed there. It was like the first time I'd stayed there, and well, actually, I'd never actually stayed there, but it was one of my first times being in the building in over 10 years. So it was actually the second time I've been in the building, but since I had left there. But anyway, I've left the corporate world behind and I have learned email is the number one way to drive sales if you have a business that's online or does any sort of online activities. And so we're going to go back in time here real quick. And once upon a time, pun intended, I used to work at Walt Disney World. I worked there for a few years after college and I was an intern there a couple times while I was in college. And that's a picture of me. I'm actually the one acting crazy there in the back. And that was on one of those internships. And when I got back from one of the internships, at the time we were giving each other our address books. It's kind of like if you remember, like maybe in high school or junior high, you signed yearbooks. We were signing address books, and everyone was giving everyone like trading physical addresses because we would send each other postcards when we got back. Um, because a lot of us didn't know about email. This is really dating myself to the mid 90s here. And one one girl, woman, young lady, she had given me her email address. And I got back to school and I realized that I could sign up for an email account through the school using a program called Pine, which if you've never heard of it, don't worry. It was this monochrome thing. You had to use like keyboards for, or not keyboards, letters on your keyboard to like access commands. It was very, very outdated compared to like what we had today. It was all text. But it gave me the ability to reach out to my first email pen pal. I think her name was Julia. And I just reached out to her. I'm like, hey, in case you don't know, this is my email address if you want to write me back. Because if you sent somebody a letter, you had to give them your address to write back because they couldn't just write you back because they didn't know. It wasn't like unless you put it in the envelope, like in the from. But if you didn't put it in the envelope in the from, they had no idea how to send you a letter back if they didn't already have the address. So I figured it was the same way with email. Boy, was I wrong. I've learned quite a few things since then. So um, now, fast forward to today, I've learned a few things about what email does for you and for your business. And so, first of all, one of the main functions is it builds rapport with that audience and authority. It gets people closer to taking whatever that next step is. You want people to take action. Maybe that next step is just to watch a video. Maybe that next step is to book a phone call. Maybe it's to purchase a product, whatever that is, to get to your service. You want to get people closer and closer through your email. And that's, I think email is better at it than any other form of marketing if done right. And it outperforms social media by far. If you have 10,000 followers on LinkedIn, you're lucky if a fraction of them see your post or whatever, and half the time they're just scrolling past it. Whereas with email, like if somebody opens your email, they're making the conscious choice to click on it. So that's a micro commitment to go into your email and take a look at it. And while they're in their email inbox, they have the mentality of I'm looking for things to do. Whereas on social media, I'm just looking for things to occupy my time. Because a lot of times people use their email inbox almost like a to-do list. So they just have a different mindset than they do on other channels. So that helps you drive revenue. And it should be the number one ROI activity that you could do in marketing. And so you may be wondering, why should I listen to you, Kevin, besides hosting the summit? People do come to me. These are people that have come to me in direct messaging on LinkedIn. The interesting thing is, actually blurred out their names and faces because all those people have at least 17,000 followers. I think of the three of them, I just happened to look it up. I'm like, oh, I forget these people all have decent followings. And they've done well with LinkedIn, but they were trying to figure out email. And so they were coming to me because they've kind of learned that I've got this, for lack of a better term, reputation. And I don't mean that to brag. It's just I've learned a few things along the way because I have sent 15 million plus emails that I even can track. And so that's three different inboxes there, or not inboxes. I guess you call them outboxes. Probably a better term that I could use than that. But about 13.5 million in active campaign with this one particular account, 1.2 million using Kartra. That's for my business that I do the virtual summits with, and then another email platform that's not being used. I had because we're no longer using that. We don't have a paid plan. I still have data, so I was able to take screenshots of the emails that we sent and put it into ChatGPT because it would tell me the recipients, and it was 400,000 we had sent just in the time that I was working on it before we switched over to Active Campaign. So 13.6 million plus 400,000 is 14 million plus 1.2 million is, well, we'll call it a little over 15 million emails. So that's given me a lot of data points to figure out what works and what doesn't. So, oh, and I circled those. So anyway, results. Let's talk about what kind of results that's gotten. So all kinds of different results. Some are trackable, some are not, but things that are trackable are $1.5 million in digital product sales. And then over $1 million in ARR, which is annual recurring revenue. Now, some of those people might not stay more than a year, some may stay less than a year, but let's just say, for the sake of keeping it simple, about $1 million. And that's about how long someone would stay, so we know how their monthly payment would be for services. So that's about $1 million for the company that I'm doing email marketing for. And what's interesting is that's getting people to say, hey, go on this link that we can track and go to this calendar, and then we can track it back to the email marketing. Now, what ends up happening is not everybody opens your emails. Sometimes just that little email reminder is just like almost like when you see a billboard in the background. It just reminds you of whatever it is, that message that they're trying to get in front of you. And so they may not even take the action we want them to take, but they still eventually take the action. And so they might Google the name of the company and go book an appointment or something, or make a phone call. But it was the email that was constantly in their face, and on a fairly regular basis, reaching out to them to remind them, oh, by the way, we do this service. So that's, I would say, a very conservative number, but at least it's something that's trackable, the $1 million in ARR for services. All right, so now let's talk about some definitions of email And this might be basic for some people, but I think it's just good to note because there's a lot of people out there that I think don't quite understand. So I'm going to create a framework here to help you understand different types of emails. And really, what I'm going to be talking about is a particular type of email, which I'll explain here in a moment. But if you think about it, the two biggest players in email, both in outbound and inbound, meaning somebody sending emails and somebody receiving emails, is going to be Outlook, which is Microsoft, and Gmail, which is Google. So and whether you have a at gmail.com email address or at yourcompany.com, but you use Google Workspace or use Outlook 360 or 365, whatever they call it, you're sending those emails through Outlook and you're receiving your emails through Outlook. And the interesting thing is that they're making decisions on whether or not it's not really decisions, it's an algorithm, but an algorithm is deciding whether or not your email goes into their inbox or not. And the reason they have to do that is because if you think about junk mail, if we got that picture there in the middle, junk mail is somewhat limited by the fact there's a cost. And so even if you're doing postcards, whatever the postage is, plus the cost of the postcard, you're looking at what, 80 cents to a dollar, plus labor and time and all that other stuff. So let's just call it a dollar for every postcard you send that you don't know if someone's even going to see it because it might just go straight into the trash. So you really have to have your numbers dialed in with what you're sending out, and because you're limited by cost. And so if you want to reach 1,000 people by postcard, in that rough example of a dollar per postcard, you're going to spend $1,000 to reach those 1,000 people. Whereas with email, there really isn't an incremental cost for the most part to reach a higher number of people. So you could theoretically reach a whole bunch of people. Now you could destroy your email reputation, which I'll explain a little bit more about here in a second. But what they're trying to avoid is an inbox that actually this is my inbox. It's a Hotmail inbox that I've had for a very long time, but I still get a lot of junk in it. And so, Microsoft, if you're watching, please fix this. So they're trying to avoid this. So if you look at that, like everything is just absolute junk. Like a lot of the words don't even make sense. Car shield space D quote, like the D quote, like I don't know, what is a D quote? Oh, car shield quote. Like it's just it's not even these like real companies sending me emails, and so it's just garbage, and they're trying to avoid that experience for their users. And so there's all these rules, so to speak, and algorithms deciding very quickly, does this go in the trash can or does this go into and when I say trash can, I really mean spam folder. Does that go into spam or does it go into the inbox? And so it's deciding based on a variety of factors, which I'll talk a little bit more about here in a minute. So you can't just send mass emails with your regular email without totally destroying your reputation as a sender because it's not just Outlook and Gmail. It's not just Google and Microsoft that are looking. There's also other organizations that are trying to keep tabs on senders and things of that nature. So if you're going to send out mass sendings, you want to make sure that you have the right tools to do that. And so if you're sending cold emails, that's people who've never heard from you. Theoretically, you could just go into your email account and send an email to whoever you want to send it to. And just send an email. And chances are it'll probably arrive in their inbox, even if they've never heard of you and it's a cold email because it's just that one email. Now, if you're going to send an email to 5,000 people, you you can't just send like put in the BCC 5,000 people. They won't let you do that. Or send to 5,000 people, which is really bad form if everyone can see the two, like from your email inbox. So what's happening is you have to have tools to help you send out those so you don't totally mess things up, meaning your reputation and ability to get in the inbox, because one or two cold emails is not going to make a difference. So you have these tools like Instantly, Lemlist, and Apollo are examples. There's other ones out there, but they would help you basically send as yourself. So instead of you going into your Outlook account and sending an email, they're sending it on your behalf. So it's almost like you have a template and they're copy and pasting it. Now, there's warm emails, which is for subscribers, and that would be companies like MailChimp, ActiveCampaign, Kit, formerly known as ConvertKit, Constant Contact. There's a whole bunch of them. And so those are sending to people who want to hear from you because they've raised their hand and said, yes, I'd like to hear from you. Now, could you theoretically buy a list of leads and send them through Instantly Lend List Apollo? People do it all the time. Could you do it in MailChimp, ActiveCampaign Kit? Maybe, but you might get your account shut down with them, and you might ruin your domain reputation because they have, no, without getting too technical, they've got systems set up to be able to send lots of email, send the same email because they are basically kind of vouching for you, so to speak. And so Gmail, Google, Outlook, Microsoft, they'll allow the emails coming from MailChimp, ActiveCampaign, those type of providers, because it's done a certain way. And they know, even though it might all be from your domain.com, they know, which I'll show you. So if you ever wanted to, you could go on senderscore.com and take a look at your sender reputation. Now, this isn't, I don't think it's like a credit score, but it's more just directionally accurate, to show you like, okay, you have your domain, which is kind of like your name, but where it's coming from is going to be the IP address. And so if you look here where the host name is, so that's where it's coming from, which gives us a little bit more insight. So the ones that say like ACE M, like in the middle part there, it says like ACE MS1 or MSA1.com, ACE MSA2.com. Those are all from ActiveCampaign. So ActiveCampaign is the one sending out broadcast emails, sometimes 20, 30,000 people that we're sending to. And then the ones that say Google, that's Google Workspace. And so they are sending differently. So so I can even just look right here and say, okay, these reputations, are they from, emails that either are cold emails or from, our own emails that we're sending out just, from Gmail or, from whatever, personalized, hey, I'm sending this email or replying to this person. Those come from those bottom ones from google.com, and the ones that we're sending broadcast emails out from are from ActiveCampaign. And you could, if you go, it's senderscore.org if you want to look it up. Sometimes I think you have to have a certain amount of volume before you show up on their radar. But it's worth looking up your domain to see if it's on there. But basically, you could click on the domain, or not the domain, the IP address, and you can see the sender score, and you can see that graph there where it's showing the volume of emails. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is like this one I'm looking here, this host, that's an IP address from ActiveCampaign. ActiveCampaign is very, very, as is MailChimp, Kit, whatever. They're very protective of their reputation, because it's not just their reputation like as a like sending on your behalf as a domain, it's their reputation, because if one person totally messes up their reputation for that IP address, it messes up everyone else. Because it's not just, if you have an active campaign or MailChimp account, it's not just you on that IP address, it's multiple companies. So they really want to make sure that people don't mess that up. So you can see the volume kind of changes over time. That's the blue line down there. And then the score, which is, they're all super good here. Sometimes I've seen it go dipping below the 70s, which I would say is probably something to be concerned about. But more than anything, is it going in the right direction or staying steady, like going up, or is it starting to go down? Then you may want to be concerned and take a look at some actions that you might want to do. So things to keep in mind with email is that you have to read this book, in my opinion. It's called Influence by Robert Cialdini. And so Robert talks about what he calls the weapons of influence. These are going to be some very important things to help you with your email marketing. So a couple things you could do is focus on reciprocation. So people want to do things for people that have done something for them. So if, if you ever think about it, like if someone gives you a gift, you may feel like, oh, I got to make sure I give this person a gift. Or, oh, you're putting together a guest list for a party. Oh, well, these people invited me, so I got to make sure to invite them. So it's kind of like that reciprocity, that back and forth. Now, in email marketing, that has more to do with like, if you say, hey, we've got this free gift for you, even if it's like a free PDF, it's like, oh, okay, well, they're now more likely to want to read your emails because they're more likely wanting to do something nice as in reciprocation. Uh, Commitment and consistency. This one has to do with people want to be consistent with how they identify themselves. So if you think about this, is one of the other nice things about email marketing. If people opt in for an email list about whatever the topic is, they're saying to themselves, I'm the type of person that reads emails about X, Y, and Z. And if you're associated with that topic of X, Y, and Z, them opening the emails is pretty consistent with that. And then another thing people like is social proof. So seeing other people have gotten the results that I'm after is huge. So that's why you see, oftentimes testimonials, like on the summit page, you may have noticed when you signed up for this summit, if you scroll down far enough, I had, what other people had said from some of our other summits just to demonstrate, that we have good quality summits. So people like to see what other people say. So sometimes you can just include screenshots of like, hey, this person said this. Like you probably also noticed one of my previous ones was, hey, other people are coming to Kevin and asking him questions about email marketing. And then liking, we also, if we like someone, we're more likely to want to do business with them. Now, no like and trust, as other people like to refer to it as, builds over time. So the more you're getting in front of people in their inbox, the more they're hopefully going to like you and more likely want to work with you, especially if they resonate with what you're saying. And then authority is that appeal to authority. It's kind of like if you know you were. I'll say this. I'm trying to think of a nice way to say this. So I have a son in Cub Scouts. Um, there's quite a few parents in our Cub Scout pack that are doctors. I know they're doctors now, so if they came up to me and gave me advice, I would say, "Oh, okay, great. Yeah, so they are giving me medical advice about, whatever it is that they're gastroenterologist or, eye surgeon or, whatever their specialty is. I would definitely trust them knowing that." Now, if I didn't know that and I was in a hospital and they walked up to me with a white coat and they said, hey, you may want to think about X, Y, and Z, even if I had no context that they were a doctor, but the context of they're wearing a white coat in a hospital and they were acting in a way that showed authority and confidence, I would probably trust them. But if they just walked up to me on the street in that context, it wouldn't make quite as much sense. So email is giving you a platform to demonstrate your authority. Think of an email, the white space of an email is kind of like your white coat for a doctor. And then scarcity. So this is one thing to keep in mind is, you know, wherever you can employ scarcity, it's super valuable. Even if you think about this summit, there's a scarce amount of time that you could sign up for it. The summit is going to start on X date. We're going to stop selling tickets on another date. And so by the time you're watching this, the summit's probably it's too late to buy a ticket. And then it's going to become too late to upgrade to VIP. And then so if you think about that, this is creating this natural time, like, okay, the summit's over these days. So it's creating scarcity of time. If you can employ scarcity of time, bonuses, resources, things of that in your offer, even if it's just, hey, this will be available till midnight, and it's not like you just keep making that same offer every day and it's always fake scarcity. As long as it's believable scarcity and you have a good reason for it, you'll always do better, especially in email marketing. So that's some context, a book I highly recommend you read. So, a few things that I think people worry too much about with email is unsubscribes. Just know people are going to be coming on and off your list all the time, and that's okay. Every time you send out an email, on average, about 0.5% of your list will likely unsubscribe. Sometimes more if they don't like the topic, and that's okay. Sometimes less. But if you send out 1,000 emails, theoretically, 5 people should be unsubscribing. And then also, if you send out 1,000 or an email to 1,000 people, you'll probably get one spam complaint. One, because 0.1% spam complaint is about industry average. Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less. If you send sales emails, you're probably more likely to get unsubscribes and spam complaints. But you're getting a bite at the apple to get results. And so don't worry too much about unsubscribes and spam complaints. It's going to happen. Don't look at it as like, oh, I have this list and I just have to hoard and keep these people on my list as long as possible. So I don't want to do anything that's going to keep them from um, buying from me or taking that next action. No, it's okay. It's okay. Now, you don't want to be overbearing and constantly making offers and buy, urgency, urgency, urgency. But if used correctly, it can be a very effective tool and still not have huge swings and unsubscribes and spam complaints. And then another thing I think people worry about too much is open rates. Open rates, I would say, are directionally um, important, but they're not the most important thing. And I'm going to actually talk about in another slide here in a little bit what I think are the most important things with open rate. And it's not always what people think. It's not, oh, I got to, have this, great subject line. Because I do think people worry too much about subject lines. I forget who it was. I think it was somebody in the summit had used the analogy of like with subject lines to demonstrate subject lines they're important, but they're not that important. If you think about it, like if your mom sent you an email, or if your, spouse, significant other sent you an email, or if you have kids old enough to email, if, my daughter who's, 15 sent me an email, it's not going to be like, well, I don't like their subject line, so I'm not going to open it. No, that doesn't make any sense. Um, and then sometimes people also focus too much about what to say. Sometimes it's better. This may be counter to what some people say. Just send something. If you're not sure what to say, send something. They'll at least see your face, or maybe they don't see your face. They'll at least see your name. You're in their inbox, even if they didn't open it. Um, sometimes it's just having something important to say and saying it as best as you can come up with is better than saying nothing at all. Now, you don't want to say something that might offend people or say things that are I think overly divisive, like in our political climate, unless you have a political list, if you are people on the, if you have a list of people that are all on the left or people that are all on the right, then maybe you could talk in their terms, but you don't want to, if you have just a regular list, don't start going into like politics or something that might be divisive. But for the most part, what you say is not that important. Just do your best to express yourself and over time, you will develop a voice. And people get to know that voice, and then they'll more likely know, like, and trust you. And people want authentic. So that's the thing. And so the most important factors on whether or not people open are who sends. Who is sending the email? Going back to what I was saying before, if it's a family member or someone important, you're not worried about the subject line. But what's also is who is receiving the email and if it's relevant and do they care? And then if you think about this, you know, if you focus on who you're sending to and if it's relevant to them, and relevant to them is going to change over time. And sometimes they vote by it's no longer relevant by unsubscribing or whatever the case is. And that's fine because you don't want to just keep emailing people who never open your emails. That might actually hurt you in the long run. But it doesn't hurt to email people who haven't opened in a while every now and then. But I would say for the most part, you want to get people to engage with your emails and reach out to the most engaged people the most often because people who take an action are likely to do it again. And so, oh, skip that part. So here's an example when it comes to open. People that have opened more recently are likely to open again more recently. So here's 2 emails sent a day apart, almost to the same list. It's just how far back did we go and how recently they had opened. So if you look at the one on the bottom that was sent 4 days ago, it was sent to about 12,000 people and it had about a 50% open rate. And You might be thinking, that's great. 6,100 people opened it. Now, we sent an email to almost twice as many people, but we only had 2,000 extra opens. So we sent an email to another 11,000 plus people, but only 2,000 more people opened. So the effective open rate was only like 18% for those additional people we sent it to. Now, it's still worth sending to, but this isn't, again, one of the reasons why open rates are not that important, in my opinion. It's more important who you're sending it to because I like to change it up. I like to give people the opportunity to open our emails who hadn't opened it in a while. And sometimes, maybe just distance grows a little fonder. But also having good domain reputation by not emailing everyone all the time, because maybe someone signed up 3 years ago and they forgot they signed up and they don't remember who it is that's sending them these emails every now and then. But they might be more curious if they get an email once every, few weeks from us as opposed to all the time. And then that way we show more engagement to Microsoft and Gmail, that, oh, our emails must be good because people are opening them, they're clicking on it, they're engaging with it. So you want to get engagement. And so I think over time, having more engagement with your emails and just simply people opening them is going to be helpful. Now, another reason why you also want to be careful with open rates is that open rates can be deceiving because a few years ago, Apple changed for iPhones that people had the ability to not say whether or not, or not show whether or not their email was open. So what Apple essentially does is just everybody who's signed up for whatever that program is, all their emails show as open. So everyone in the email marketing community all of a sudden had this big spike in open rates. And it wasn't because suddenly became better at subject lines. It was because all of a sudden they were getting false positives. Now, some of those are actually people who did actually open their email, but you don't always know. And so that's another reason why, for a variety of other factors, which I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on, but it can be not as big of a deal to focus on open rates as one might think. It's more important of reaching the right people who are engaging with you and have engaged with you more recently. All right. And so my next thing I'm going to bring up here, if I can just get this up on screen. All right, there we go. Change up your emails every so often. So sometimes people are like, oh, it's all about storytelling or just be transactional or whatever. Do a little bit of everything. And so if you send out stories, that's going to help build community and build rapport. Now, one thing with stories is, this is a phrase I have heard. If transparency is great, people like when people are open and vulnerable. But if you are going to be vulnerable or something that might be a little bit tough, share the scars, not the wounds. Meaning, if you're in the middle of kind of going through your own mental anguish over something, don't talk about it in email. It may not come across the way you want. Have a chance to kind of say, okay, how do I broadcast this out to people who may be interested? Now, if, for example, like if you have a relative die, you might say, oh, I had a relative die, so I'm, going to be away, so I won't be sending emails next week or something like that. And people would understand that. But you don't want to talk about, like, if you're going through, some situation, it's better after that situation is over to talk about how you overcame it and show the transformation. People always like to see the transformation. You want to always position yourself in your stories as being the before and after. So people want transformation ultimately. And so you want to demonstrate, I was where maybe you're at in these stories, and I got to hear with X, Y, and Z. So you make yourself more relatable by showing I was not always the after, I was sometimes the before. So they're the before in their story, and they're trying to get to become an after like you. And sometimes your stories can help demonstrate that. And so another reason why you show the scars is because, hey, I got through it and I got healed, would be another way to phrase it. And then teaching helps build your authority. Hey, here's 5 tips for whatever the subject is you're talking about that helps build your authority. And then eventually you gotta sell things and get some transactions going. So it's all about building that authority, having community and rapport that you're building with people, but eventually you want to sell. And you can mix and match these emails, but eventually sometimes and this makes sometimes people a little nervous of just sending an email that just says buy this now. It's okay. Don't do it all the time. But like if you have a deadline and for some offer you're making and it expires tonight at midnight, you don't have to tell them about your third grade teacher to illustrate some teaching principle um, that you're trying to get across. Maybe send that email later and just say, hey, friendly reminder, tonight at midnight there's X, Y, and Z is going to happen. So if you come back and tomorrow, that this deal won't be there. They need to see that right away. In fact, you're doing them a disservice if you're not clear and upfront with them of what you're trying to tell them. And I see people make this mistake quite a bit. They're almost afraid to sell, so they want to like incorporate stories and whatnot. And it's totally fine. You can sell in your story email. But if you have something that really is the goal is to drive transactions, especially if you're getting to the end of some sort of scarcity, like limited time deal, you want to be less worrying about teaching and stories and more just get straight to it. Is so just keep that in mind. And then another thing I have learned about emails is that not every offer works by email, but you can oftentimes find something that does. So I use this example here quite a bit. So oftentimes, especially in the internet world, when we're trying to get people off the fence, we say, hey, here's this scarcity, um, like limited time, there's a discount, there's a bonus, there's a whatever. But what is the offer that you're trying to make? Are you more like an electrician or AC tech, or are you more doing kitchen countertops and remodeling people's houses? And you don't actually have to be in home services to fit in probably one of these two camps. But just think about where you're at and how you can get people to take that action. So, for example, if you think about like if your AC went out at your house, the power went out, or your water wasn't working, all things I've had happen to me at one time or another in the last few months. You don't say, you know what, I'm going to wait until maybe I get an email about a limited time offer. I'm not even going to think about it. No, you are actively searching for, um, you're going to be on your phone. If you don't have email, you might be searching your house for the yellow pages because you want to call someone to get in and fix this now. And so if you have an offer that's like fix this now, it's not going to work as well. So in the example of let's say services, more internet-based services. So like my Amazon guy, where I also do email marketing, we have found it would not work well if we have services to help people if their account has been suspended on Amazon. They're not going to wait around until someone makes a deal or makes it more attractive. No, they might be losing tens of thousands of dollars a day. So that is an incredibly painful thing. So they're going to be very quickly saying, how do I fix this? They're not waiting for deals to come through in their email. They're going out. They're going to be an inbound lead. And so email is, really, if you think about it, you're doing outbound marketing. You're going out to the people into their inbox and presenting whatever your offer is. So that works well with, let's say, kitchen countertops, like I have here on the right. So if you have something that has a long sales cycle, like people don't just like, you know what, let's just throw caution to the wind. Let's spend 40 grand on cabinets for the house. No, they think about it. They get designs, they get quotes. Do I like the style of this particular contractor, whatever? And so that sales cycle is longer. And also, do they trust the person who's making the offer to them? So, in a lot of things that we sell, your offer might be more like the kitchen countertops, where there's a longer sales cycle. And eventually they just make the decision, okay, it's time to do it. And maybe you do something like, hey, we waive the application fee or something like that, or we'll, $500 off, or we'll, do free cutting or whatever with in my kitchen countertop example, something that's a more expensive project, a more high ticket service. Now, in the middle, you could also look at it as, do you have something that's kind of a no-brainer offer that they could do right away? So maybe it's, you know, to get people along in the kitchen thing, you could say, hey, um, send us, fill out this form and we'll send you swatches or something like that. So you're getting people to take an action, raise their hand and say, I'd like to go further on the action with you. And so that might be in other places, getting people on a webinar to get people closer to those high ticket, um, high or longer sales cycle, I should say, activities. Those offers are going to take a while to make a decision. You want to work on it maybe that way. Now, if your offer is more like the HVAC, the electricity, the plumbing, something that's so painful if it's not working properly, maybe you want to have an offer that's like a little bit more basic. So maybe it's if you're selling uh, life coaching services, you know, that might not be a good one. If you're selling uh, something that is very urgent, do you have something that's maybe going to be? I'll go back to the Amazon example. You know, maybe you have a low ticket offer. One low ticket service that's worked well for us is uh, offering to do just the main image on Amazon. So we could upgrade your main image. Here's our methodology. It's only XYZ, high perceived value and relatively low price. So something that they don't have to think too much about it. So like let's say something that's like $100 or less. So in the example of the HVAC, it could be we'll come do a tune-up of your HVAC and we'll help you figure out, make sure your AC is running this summer. And so then if they come out and they fix it or they find something wrong, maybe there's other services they can offer that they find out about once they kind of get under the hood of the AC. So they get the chance to get in front of them. And then if something does happen, they've built that rapport because they've gotten farther along with people. So they're less likely to go into Google looking for an HVAC tech. And they're like, oh, Brad or whoever was here fixing it, a couple months ago. I'll call them. I'll call their company. And so that oftentimes is helpful. So you want to always think about how can I use email as a mechanism to get people closer to that offer, whether it's something with a long sales cycle or something with a short sales cycle, or something that's super painful and they probably aren't going to use email, but I can stay front of mind. So always think about your email, how you're using it, and how you can get people closer so that you can get that $1 million offer from email. So if you'd like me to take a look at your email, what you're doing now, I'm as a totally free bonus, I'm giving away strategy calls. I don't at the moment even have any services that I'm even offering. So there's no pitch here. It literally is, I just want to help everybody that signed up for the summit. I'll have a calendar link down below. There's no strings attached. I just want to see what I can do and help people along the way. So there's no pitch in this meeting. It's literally just me trying to help you out. So look forward to hopefully speaking with you soon. Take care.